Oh, let's have a sip of tea. Oh, let's have a sip of tea. It's early in the morning. I don't know how I'm going to get through this and actually try and convey what I'm trying to say, because I feel a little bit on my own here. Now, I thought it was pretty obvious that there was something weird going on with the two most popular programs in the world at the moment by far. The Wheel, which has been franchised to many other countries, apart from the UK where it's showing at the moment, and The Traitors, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Britain's most popular TV programme, again, being franchised all over the world. I thought it was pretty obvious there was something strange happening here. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine in the UK. And I said, you know, and what's so amusing is that actually nothing's happening. And he said, I could not disagree with you more. And I thought, well, there we go. You know, I'm out on a limb again. And it's true that I guess when you watch these two programs, you get the feeling that there are things happening. There's a lot going on. But I kind of contend that that isn't the case. That actually nothing's happening. It's all illusion. So let's try and get to the bottom of what I'm trying to say. Before I start, I have to say that I have watched The Traitors, and I really enjoyed it, and I've watched The Wheel. I can't say I enjoyed it, The Wheel, with Michael McIntyre, but nevertheless, I sort of got through it. I kind of like the slightly gary sort of kitsch quality of it. And to be honest, like most people, it's a way of actually deprogramming the brain, isn't it, for an hour? I mean, it's something that requires absolutely no input whatsoever, or even thought. It sort of just happens in front of you. And the reason for that is because the host, Michael McIntyre, he does all the work. He does all the work. He runs around on that wheel and keeps the energy up. And the reason he does that, I contend, is because actually nothing's happening. Nothing's happening except Michael McIntyre is running around keeping the energy up. That's why he gets paid whatever he gets paid a show, probably 20 or 30,000, maybe more. And it's a hard job, because can you imagine how exhausting that must be? Okay, to try and convince people for 1 hour that something is happening when it isn't. That's quite amazing. And Claudia Wilkerman does exactly the same on The Traitors. Her job is basically to give the impression that something's happening, whereas nothing is actually happening. Nothing is happening at all. And yet the kind of the high dramatics which she has to lead with gives the impression that there is some great plan involved, or there is some profound meaning attached to even the slightest of actions going on in that castle. I hope you've seen these programs. If you haven't, don't watch them. Don't get hooked. You know, I mean, The Traitors is something that you kind of watch one episode and then you're finished. You know, you keep going back. So I'm not saying this is bad TV. I'm saying that this is the epitome of great television. If you want engagement, that's all it's about now, isn't it? Can you engage someone? But they are a great way to switch off completely, basically to go in a sort of transcendental, weird state where the mind almost ceases to exist and the colours and the sort of movement happens in front of us. I would say that it was a little bit like looking at the ocean in a way, watching these programs, but of course it's not really, because although, again, looking at the ocean is very relaxing, or a fire, looking at a fire is very relaxing, because although you're sitting still, you're not sitting still in that way that kind of irritates you and you start getting frustrated and you start wanting to move, because the fire or the sea is moving in front of you. And just that small amount of movement is enough to kind of engage you and keep you calm. And it's the same with The Wheel, it's the same with The Traitors, I think. We just have to sit there and just let it kind of wash in front of us. Because nothing is really happening except colours and movement and sound and nothing else. But it's constructed in a way that's deceptive because it gives the impression that something's happening. It's very clever production. Okay, but as I said, I've watched the Traitors, from time to time. I'm not saying that, this is a great TV. This is the the Traitors is the epitome of reality TV. It's reality TV which has completely succeeded in 100% engagement plus 100% vacuity with nothing happening. And the two kind of like a magic mix. We used to complain that TV was dumbing down. Do you remember when dumbing down started? Now, many of you are probably too young to remember, but up until about 1980, you're not going to believe this, but ITV and the BBC used to have like interviews with philosophers on TV at like 8 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. And there were a lot of arts programmes, the South Bank Show, Arena, Panorama, World in Action, the sort of programmes that really wouldn't get a look in during those peak hours now. And so they started to sort of drift away and they were replaced with what we call sort of more popular programming. And that was when we started talking about dumbing down, that people couldn't handle, people didn't want serious stuff. They didn't want to learn. They didn't want a documentary about how the human body goes on like BBC One at 7:30 or 8:30 at night. They just wanted to watch, either a sitcom or latterly, of course, reality shows. And when reality shows came in like Big Brother, we felt this was dumbing down. But if you think about those shows, they weren't really that dumbing down, were they? I mean, Big Brother is like a human zoo. It's quite interesting. I mean, I've not seen it myself, but I mean, I know of it, and it's a human zoo situation. That's almost it's anthropology, isn't it, to some extent? Modern anthropology, what we call participant observing the nature of the human, with a close eye being the camera. And I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Well, there's an element of survivalism about that, and survivalism's always been quite interesting, hasn't it? How do people cope in certain circumstances? And then if we go back a little bit to the 70s, if you look at the sort of peak slots which the Traitors and The Wheel have now, they were taken with a couple of shows like The Generation Game and Morecambe and Wise. Now, The Generation Game was a game, it was 1 hour long. You could say it was similar to The Wheel in a way, insofar as it was that time slot, that length of time, with a very popular host. Generation Game, Bruce Forsyth, he was the biggest star of his day. Michael McIntyre, you could say, is possibly the biggest kind of host, comedian of the BBC at the moment. And there are people involved, members of the public. They're very similar, but the Generation Game was very different, because the Generation Game, it used to get those people to work closely with a partner or relative and actually do things. So, for example, they would have a challenge where they'd have to make a ceramic pot, or maybe they'd have to act in a very short kind of play, and they would be judged on by an expert. These were kind of quite sophisticated programs in a way. The same with something like, say, Morecambe and Wise, which was the last of the kind of variety TV entertainment shows. They've completely gone out of fashion now. But Morecambe and Wise, you could see that it was very heavily, there was a lot of writing beforehand, and putting together of sketches and comedic turns, and special guests who came in and often performed against their type in some fashion. Famously, Angela Rippon, the newsreader who danced. In other words, both of those were really quite sophisticated shows. Now, The Wheel, I contend with The Wheel and the Traitors that actually nothing's happening. Nothing's happening at all. So The Wheel and the Traitors they're illusions of substance. They seem to be very substantive, but there's very little going on, and that's a clever trick. In other words, it's all in the production and the engagement, rather like all social media, designed to engage. They are, both of them, notice how it's all visual dynamism going on. Little visual cues, little kind of emotional charges are popped around everywhere, but they're just like algorithmic. They're designed in order to make you feel a certain way. They are nudging you and manipulating you into a certain state, rather than presenting the material and letting you decide as to whether or not this is something that you feel is satisfying, nourishing, satiating, sustaining. Okay. You're probably thinking, or you might be thinking, well, there's lots going on. I was like my friend who I spoke to, and he said, I could not disagree with you more. There is so much going on, so much intrigue. Well, I mean, I generally contend that that's not the truth. I mean, if you actually break down The Wheel, for all the shenanigans that's going on for Michael McIntyre running around, rather embarrassingly in my opinion, trying to keep the energy up, sort of doing a little bit of small talk here and there with sort of people who are sitting in chairs and spinning around a wheel. The program is really about 8 questions, isn't it? Now, you've got people coming up and down on hydraulic chairs. You've got a spinning wheel. You've got about 3,000 LED lights that are lighting up. And you've got this kind of larger-than-life clown figure who's running around hysterically. But the essence of the show is about 8 questions, isn't it? They ask a question, and then if you answer 4 or 5 questions in a row, you know, you might win 30,000 quid. That's what it is. That's all that's happening. 8 boring old questions. The rest of it's kind of hydraulics, fluorescent lights, and a rather hysterical host who you can imagine when he gets. Can you imagine when he gets back to that dressing room afterwards? I mean, he just must feel so emotionally exhausted because he's conjuring something out of nothing. I mean, he's an amazing guy, isn't he? I mean, no wonder you get paid so much for that kind of thing. He's an alchemist. He's an alchemist. But there's nothing going on. There's nothing happening. Yes, the wheel is spinning. A hydraulic chair is moving up and down. There are a few bad jokes flying around, but I mean, they wouldn't have been jokes that I don't think would have ever been written into the Morecambe and Wise show. They're so crass and silly, and you know, there's nothing happening. And they spin. Sorry to use that pun. They spin, but they spin this out for an hour. They stretch this out. And you can see it's like a concertina. If somebody wins in 6 questions, then you can see the edit of the show has been kind of expanded. So this is a little bit more of Michael McIntyre trying to keep the energy up, trying to be an alchemist, make something out of nothing. And if the programme has gone on and maybe there are 9 or 10 questions have been involved because of the general way the programme quiz is organised, then it's compressed and you don't quite see so much of Michael McIntyre trying to keep up the energy. But the point is, this is the #1 peak Saturday evening show, and I contend that nothing is happening. You know, there's less in it than in the first round of one player of Mastermind who gets 18 questions. It's 8 questions, 8 multiple choice questions, and the whole of the rest of it is a circus. I'm just interested in the phenomena of how we've come to the point now where we can be sold a pure spectacle of this type with the flashing lights and things. It might as well be a firework display with such little substance. And why we enjoy it so much? Why do we love it? Let's look at the Traitors. The Traitors, again, is a program that seems to be incredibly busy. It's got flashing lights, it's got activities, it's got that kind of musical soundtrack, it's got the sort of dark flavour, with the black trucks coming in and the strange atmospherics of the castle in which it is set. It's got Claudia Winkleman, of course, now she's not a clown, of course. She's the opposite of the clown, isn't she? She's this devilish figure that kind of haunts the castle. But pull back again, and what is actually happening? Now, firstly, let's not get overexcited about the fact that they do a sort of 10-minute activity in the middle. The activity really doesn't serve any purpose. I don't know are any of you familiar with It's a Knockout, which was a very popular show in the 70s, where people kind of did sort of strange outdoor activities in teams. Or it was called Jeux sans frontières for a while, which is the French word for games without frontiers. So they do this kind of It's a Knockout 10 minutes where they have to run around in a field and dig up treasure chests or something like that. This is a diversion, okay? This is a diversion. This is something that they have to do to break up, because it's quite a long television program, actually. And they need to break it up. And so they have kind of done this artifice, this event. Nothing really happens in the event. I mean, they give a justification for the event, which is you will add 5,000 more to the prize pot. Nobody gives a damn. Or you might win. But this is merely just an affectation, in a way, a justification for that slot. Think of that slot as a kind of ad break, because they need some form of break, because the rest of it is people just wandering around the castle. And at best, what you're going to get out of them is maybe some speculation. I think it's Johnny. I'm suspicious of Deborah. Now, there's nothing wrong with that kind of thing, of course. But it's pure speculation. Never in the history of the Traitors has anybody had any real insight. And you can see that because it plays out. It's pure chance. They rarely are able to identify through sort of detective work who is a traitor and who is a faithful. Okay. But they give the impression they're acting as Sherlock Holmes, but it's a dice game. It's a dice game. So what we're watching is people wandering around saying, do you think it could, do you think it could be Paul? Well, I'm a bit suspicious of Sarah. Why? I don't know. It was the way that she laughed. Whatever. But the fact is that when it comes to the nightly expulsion, where they sit round a round table and they're given an opportunity to vote one of the people out, and they're meant to find the one who's a traitor, or somebody who's a traitor. That's a dice game. They're just throwing dice. And that's why whether or not the person they find is a traitor or faithful is just purely statistical. Most of the time they find faithfuls because there are more faithfuls than traitors. There's never been any insight in any of the series. So we're watching people wandering around, saying things that are inane and have no basis in reality, and then throwing a dice onto a table. I'm not saying it's not entertaining, but the entertainment, the engagement comes from elsewhere, not from not from what's really happening, not from the content as such, but very cleverly put together in a way that engages us. And that's what all of this social media world is about, really, isn't it? It's about engaging. It doesn't really matter how, it doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter whether it's true or it's a lie, as long as we engage. And we know how to engage because it's purely psychological. It's not complicated. We now know what attracts people. You know, it's just like having a table which has got chopped carrots on it all over it, and then one beautiful cream and strawberry bun. I mean, we may deny it, but most of us, we want to have that bun. You know, we'd have our eye on that bun the sooner we walked in. We understand how the human animal is a very simple animal, and we know how it works. And they have, like all of the technologies today, they are mastering the art of producing something which is basically nothing. It doesn't mean to say it's not good entertainment, as I said. So some of you might be familiar with Roger Waters' album Amused to Death, but not know that it was based on a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And I think by a guy called Neil Postman, and he basically this is before social media, he was saying that the TV then was this sort of channel of amusement and engagement, rather in the same way that social media is now, which kind of altered public discourse and changed the way that we feel about information, that we weren't interested in anything that was kind of intellectually challenging or nourishing or even truthful. What we were interested in now was simply for things to hold our attention. And so that was the key point. And he was really well ahead of his time in a way. I'm not denigrating sort of reality TV or what used to be called dumbed down TV at all. I mean, that's not what I'm here to do whatsoever. I've got no particular insight into, what people enjoy and what people don't enjoy. And it's nothing to do with me at all. I'm just simply looking at one particular phenomena, which is about these two programs particularly. I mean, if you look at other reality TV programs like, well, let's take two of the most popular, Love is Blind and The Great British Bake Off. There are obviously 500 others I could mention. Let's just take those two. Love is Blind is quite an interesting, I think, insight into often young people's wishes as far as partners go and, desires in life. I don't know. It's a kind of little insight into the human mind, isn't it? And nobody reads books anymore. And that's how we used to understand how people felt. So if we can find out how people feel in some way about something, that's not a bad thing. Because with a book, you used to be able, it's the only way of really sort of getting inside somebody else. We can't do it any other way. And with the Bake Off, of course, you've got that slightly educational part of it as well as it being enjoyable. I mean, we are in the act of baking, and it's quite fascinating just learning about all these weird little different cakes and breads that they make and how they put them together, and it's a very amiable show as well. It kind of makes you feel good as well in some ways. There's a great camaraderie amongst the hosts because there are 4 hosts. So I'm not saying there isn't value in these things. And of course people need to relax, and the television has always been one of the greatest ways to kind of relax. But the thing about The Wheel and The Traitors is I think they're different. And I think there are 2 things. The first thing is that they are the most popular TV programs we have. Okay, so they are the ones that are most successful at engagement. But also, in a way, they are the most vacuous. the leanest, the most undernourishing of them all. And I think that's quite an interesting idea to consider if you are considering what the future is going to look like. Because if we are going to become a post-human society, a post-humanity society, humans in the way that I've always considered, and you have always considered, I guess, people to be and what they want and how they are in the world, you know, instead of just sort of sitting in front of a phone and sitting in front of a screen and sort of being fed algorithmic content, then this could be the shape of TV to come. We're kind of fed it and it looks like there's something there, but there isn't. Anyway, I'm probably still going to look forward to the next episode and find out who gets ejected. Even though there's part of me that is ashamed of wasting that time. But I can't help it. I just can't help it.